Hey everybody, so I wanted to talk about a recent seller interview that I did with an Amazon FBA business owner. He grew his business from zero to almost $500,000 in about 3 years. So right at the start of the pandemic, not only was he able to build this business very quickly, but he was able to do this through a disruptive event, especially to e-commerce businesses such as a pandemic. And he was able to do this just as a single business owner. He didn't have other employees. And I felt like this was helpful to discuss for anybody who is currently running an Amazon FBA or e-commerce business or considering starting an e-commerce business. So the first question that I asked straight up was, what do you think contributed to the success that you experienced in a relatively short period of time and through this kind of event? And this is what he said.
So I spent a lot of time building a very robust supply chain. One, because I wanted it to be bulletproof in terms of quality. And two, I wanted to be able to repeat and launch products quite easily. And I wanted everything in place to do that because I think that that is probably one of the strengths of this account. In Asia, where I would be sourcing a lot of my products from, I built a very, very strong team. And I brought tens of thousands of products through that team. And the rate of the mistakes or anything that happens there is extremely low. And it took me a long time to find a company that keep that high quality rate. And I interviewed a lot at the start. So that would be my biggest learning, is having a good, smooth supply chain, obviously doing all of your front end analytics well, but building a team that is amazing to work with and that won't let you down.
So as you heard here, he talked about how he really prioritized supply chain. It was almost like he was talking about prioritizing it as the forefront before everything else. And he said he wanted to do that for two reasons. One was that he would be able to more confidently guarantee the quality of each product, but also he would be able to just kind of focus on launching the products. And in this business, he did go through a pretty aggressive launch phase where he repeatedly launched product after product. And he was able to just focus on doing that, knowing that the supply chain was going to be able to handle fulfilling those existing products and the new products. So I think this is really important because this is often overlooked, especially with people who are kind of just getting into Amazon FBA. For some, the attention up front is a lot about the marketing, the promotion. And I feel like in this case, it's kind of a shift in mentality where you are laying the groundwork. You're setting a solid foundation for everything else that's to come. So I dug a little bit further and asked about how did he actually find these people? How did he know when he had found the right people to work with? And this is what he said.
What I focused on was building a relationship with an independent company in China, in Shenzhen, who I wanted to be my hands and eyes on the ground. And everything I do now goes through individuals there who I would have a very high level of contact with. They're probably the only suppliers who I have a direct line to, and they're on my WhatsApp. And it's just when they have a question or I have a question, it's just direct communication. So I have a large supplier pool of manufacturers that would all go to one focal point in Asia, and they handle absolutely everything from there. So everything is spotted before it leaves China. Everything, quality control is done there. And as I said, I've done this with other companies with the quality control, but still miss things. But now after 2+ solid years with these guys, it's just been incredible. I would put more faith in them being better at the job than me being out there doing it myself. And having the products in my hands. So they've been invaluable.
So my takeaway here was the business owner, he worked with a partner who is kind of the hands and eyes, boots on the ground, so to speak, in China that could act and speak on his behalf and negotiate with suppliers, find reliable suppliers, and make sure that the quality of the inventory was as expected. And from that, he was able to identify who were the suppliers that he wanted to develop that relationship with. And one thing I liked hearing was the level of interaction that he had with his suppliers. He was saying that he directly communicates with them on WhatsApp and on a consistent basis. My takeaway here was that he was really treating the supply chain part and the people involved in that as part of his team, kind of like his employees. And I thought this was nice to hear because usually there is kind of that barrier between the business owner and the suppliers, or when you're just starting out, it's hard to know what kind of relationship or interaction should you have with the suppliers. And I think this is just a good example of what it could look like to have a strong working relationship with your suppliers and what kind of value they can really provide to your business. And earlier in the interview, he was telling me about how he had actually started in an e-commerce business, just not FBA related. It was just they were fulfilling the products themselves and pretty much doing everything manually. It was like a DTC company, direct to consumer. And so I asked him if that experience is what led to the kind of philosophy that he has about how he's building his Amazon FBA businesses.
You always do things the hard way the first time around. Everything I would do, then apply a mental stress test to it, meaning if there's one supplier who creates quite a simple product where there might be many more in China who can create the product, I will go ahead, even if I have a good relationship with one manufacturer, I'll go away and start interviewing two backups. Just so if, during coronavirus, different districts are being shut down, we didn't skip a beat. We were able to pivot. We had relationships with other manufacturers who could step in for that time period. And that gives us an opportunity to test them out and see how they're doing. And there's price competitiveness then. And that just comes with time of building the brand and the products. So yeah, it's a good system and one that I look at and kind of say, wow, in 2 years, all of these different connections, it's amazing what can be done.
So my takeaway here is the importance of redundancies and really stress testing every potential point of failure. And supply chain is a huge point of failure because without that properly functioning, everything else downstream just can't work. So even when he had good suppliers, he still had, as part of his process, to send test orders to other suppliers to see if they would be able to be potential alternatives. In addition to it not disrupting the supply chain, it also allowed him to be more price competitive because he would be able to kind of shop for different prices and then be able to maybe come to his existing suppliers saying, this is the offer that I'm getting here. Would you be able to match that? I think that was a really strong area of his business. So I asked him, was there anything he tried with this business that didn't work out as well, or a learning lesson from any mistakes? And this is what he said.
I learned a big lesson last year. You start in January, you look at the year ahead, and you say, let's go for it. The business was doing very well by the start of last year. There was good cash flow. There was good capital reserves. I said, I'm just going to go for it and start launching products as fast as possible and designing products and kind of ramp the team up. And what I learned in the second 6 months of last year is that when you really start compounding and launching products one on top, the costs really compound, and the amount of dedication and time that you can give to each product launch, it compounds as well. And you inevitably don't give enough attention as a one-man team, you see, because I'm working on this part-time. I'm involved in one or two other things. And for me to do that effectively, I needed another team member or two. We needed our specific roles. And that was just, I launched 3 products probably in succession from July, August, September, October. And your cash flow takes a hit because your PPC campaigns are through the roof and your shipping and your storage. And I found myself kind of spread quite thinly. And yeah, that was probably one thing I learned is do one product launch at a time, give it a bit of breathing space, move on to the next. Don't just throw it all out at once and think you can do it. Now, if a team was bigger, that is definitely the approach to take. But as a one-man band growing it, just a few product launches a year, do them really well. And that is what has worked really solidly.
So the learning lesson here was his pace of growth, especially when things seem to be going really well. It's very easy to think geometrically, as in, if I launch my second product, I'm doing this well, I will be able to launch a second product and do 2x of that. I'll be able to launch a third product, do 3x of that. But just know that for every product that you launch, you're going to be potentially spreading yourself thinner in terms of capital, just being able to allocate capital to the quantity of inventory per product type that you're able to purchase, but then also spreading yourself thin on focus. So especially if you are a single business owner, giving yourself that breathing room between launches just to see how the dust settles, just to evaluate where your resources actually are, and making sure that you're not spreading yourself too thin financially or time-wise, or just through focus and energy, and just not over-committing by being excited by the growth. So the next question I asked was, if he were to keep the business, how would he try to grow it? And this is how he answered that question.
Gifting covers a variety of keywords, occasions, demographics, and I've sorted through a lot of that. I'd have a few high priorities. So I just keep going through the priority list one by one and bringing on new products for new demographics. I 100% sell in the US. So definitely entering new markets. That was high on my list as well. Canada, the UK, into Europe, which would be easier for me as I'm based here in Ireland. And then as you look at different product categories and do product research, I realized that the gifting category, if you get all these horror stories of listings being taken down by hijackers or people potentially coming in and attacking a brand, if you're dispersed through gifting, through loads of different keywords that no one product is exposed to an attack or to anything negative happening. You know, the Amazon space, you can get things thrown at you. So the fact that none of my products are too similar in terms of the customer base is if something happens in one product, if it ever happens, the rest of the account would be completely ineffective. So it's nicely diversified. And I was always looking for a low exposure to risk in that sense. I look at it as a stool, and the more legs I put on the stool, the better. So every product is just a new leg on the stool. It makes it sturdier. If one gets knocked off, it's not the end of the world. And that was kind of the ethos from the start.
So 2 takeaways here. The first is that this business remained entirely in the US, the North American marketplace. So it's just proves that it's possible to build even a $500,000 FBA business in 3 years by focusing purely on one market. I think there is a feeling of pressure for some to expand to other marketplaces as quickly as you can, which again can spread yourself thin. But also, when you see something like this, he's here to exit, to sell his business. When you see this kind of growth opportunity where this business is clearly validated in only one marketplace, that to somebody who has the capital or the time or the experience to acquire this business, they see a very clear path for growth. So my point is, don't see it as a negative thing, especially if you're trying to sell your business, if you don't have every single base covered, because it's a very compelling story to be able to show that the business is performing very well in one particular area and that it's almost waiting for that next level. And the second takeaway to his answer was about how he decided to diversify his product line. This business is in the gifts niche, and because of that, he sells different types of products for different types of gifts, different types of holidays, different types of occasions. So the types of products that he's selling, they're not necessarily ones that relate to each other. I know in a lot of Amazon FBA education, they talk about launching products that are related to each other so that a customer can purchase one product and see a related product and purchase that one as well. This is kind of a different way of looking at product diversity and expanding your brand line, because he has a list of products that are standalone products. And what this does is it allows one product, if that product does happen to be hijacked or competitors attempt to attack that one specific product, all of these different products are standalone products that aren't really influenced by the performance of other products. Each product acts as kind of the leg of a stool that just further stabilizes the foundation. So those are just a few takeaways. This business actually still might be for sale on the marketplace. So if you felt like you just wanted to acquire a business that had this kind of foundation, I recommend checking out the marketplace for this listing number, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. And if you found this helpful and you'd like to subscribe to see more videos like this, feel free to do so. And I hope to see you next time. So on that note, take care.